How does it manifest at all? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that my kiddos that have had really big changes in behavior all of a sudden, that can be like a red flag for me. So I had a kid at the beginning of the year who, of course, being the sixth grade counselor, I didn't know them at the beginning of the year. But he was like really solid behavior at the beginning of the year. All of a sudden, he started acting out. And so, in checking in with him, I found out that he and his family are in transition and they needed all of these resources that he wasn't getting.
Right.
So, of course, home life is all of a sudden unstable. You come to school and you're not going to be able to concentrate. You're not going to be able to stay awake. You're not going to be able to do the things that you should be doing when you don't have what you need at home.
Right.
So that was, just a sudden change in behavior. Now I have a relationship with kids who they'll just come to me and be like, Miss Street, like I don't have anything to eat at home for this weekend and I'm worried about it.
Right.
So I'm really lucky that just like relationship building, they will identify themselves a lot of the time. But I definitely use the teachers, and they'll pass information along to me. They'll be like, hey, this kid's sleeping a lot in class and he hasn't normally done that. Or, hey, this kid was talking to me earlier today and mentioned that mom and dad are getting a divorce, and so they're now going from like a house to an apartment. Like, do you maybe want to check in on them and make sure things are okay?
Right.
Because it's not only like the kiddos who are in transition in their homes, but also the kids who may be going from like a dual income household to a one income household.
Right.
So I think that that's a population that sometimes kind of gets forgotten because they're not necessarily in poverty, but it's a lifestyle change.
Attainment, financial security, and subjective perceptions of social status and social class. Socioeconomic status can encompass quality of life attributes as well as the opportunities and privileges afforded to people with society.
Economic status may also have more traumatic events, adverse life experiences, chronic stress, and those things can be linked to lower health outcomes, can be linked to lower career possibilities or potentials, can be linked to more behavioral referrals, or seen by some people as low motivated or not.
Right.
And so, but all these, are not necessarily like a causation or a look at this sign and this is what it points to,
Right.
but is more like a correlation due to other things that they may be experiencing as they're trying to find food, safety, a sense of belonging.
Right.
Children in low-income schools are less likely to have well-qualified teachers. A teacher's years of experience and quality of training are correlated with children's academic achievement. Schools with students from the highest concentrations of poverty have fewer library resources to draw on than those serving middle-income children. Children from low SES families enter high school with average literacy skills 5 years behind those of high-income students. In 2014, the high school dropout rate among persons between 16 to 24 years old was highest in low-income families as compared to high-income families. The success rate of low-income students in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics disciplines is much lower than that of students who do not come from underrepresented backgrounds. Individuals within the top family income quartile are 8 times more likely to obtain a bachelor's degree by age 24 as compared to individuals from the lowest family income quartile. Children from lower SES households are about twice as likely as those from high SES households to display learning-related behavior problems. A mother's socioeconomic status is also related to her child's inattention, disinterest, and lack of cooperation in school. Perception of family economic stress and personal financial constraints affected emotional distress or depression in students and their academic outcomes. Racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic barriers generally hinder individuals' vocational development. Career barriers are significantly higher for those from poor backgrounds, people of color, women, those who are disabled, and LGBTIQ identified individuals. Individuals from a lower social class generally had less career-related self-efficacy when it came to vocational aspirations. Those from higher social class backgrounds tend to be more successful in developing career aspirations and are generally better prepared for the world of work because of access to resources such as career offices, guidance counselors, better schools, high-level social actors, and familial experience with higher education.
So whenever new policies come in line, like desegregation of schools, they were looking at equity of schools. But then other times they may be looking at, Wake County, maybe about 10 years ago, did a school choice program where you could sign your kid up for any school in the county.
Right.
They weren't looking at efficiency or cost of that. They were looking at underlining freedom and choice to education. And so typically, and like right now at this moment, a lot of the freedom and choice in your education, and therefore your access to education, benefits people with a higher socioeconomic status. So the people that are bused to a school outside their neighborhood, they don't have as much of a choice in what school they can access,
Right.
as people who maybe live in that neighborhood and can afford the home in that neighborhood for that desired school.
Right.
But then historically too, like, schools are meant to benefit a certain class of people and raise them up and keep them in holding like all the access and equity to privilege, to certain jobs, to money, to capital. And so what was the question again? It was the challenges faced.
Yeah.
So one thing that I do just in general from the first year that I teach is I keep a hygiene bag. And so there's some things, some shame factors that exist for kids, and one of it is hygiene, and it's something that you can't really, do on your own. I remember when I was growing up, my family was extremely poor, and I would go visit my grandparents on the weekends, and one time my grandma asked me, how are you washing your clothes? And I told her, we washed them in the sink because we didn't have a washer. And so she started having me pack a suitcase of clothes to do laundry at her house. But that's something that, like, our kids go through as well. Like, they have dirty clothes. And so, over the summer, usually I pick a few kids that I taught the previous year, and we go back to school shopping. And and they have new clothes. And we go to TJ Maxx and Target, and we find some things that are a deal, and so that's a small way. The hygiene bags during the year, it's 7th grade, and so people start smelling. They don't know that they smell. They don't know really how to deal with their smell, and so that's two little ways that I engage before the school year starts, back to school shopping, and then during the year of just providing things to limit the amount of shaming that might happen. Programs exist like Backpack Buddies. I know that some schools, like our school a few years ago, during the teacher rallies, really came together in finding a way to provide meals for students that wouldn't be in school that day. And so I know that there are some movements as far as food. I know that our ESL department last year worked hard so that people weren't wasting food. And so how can we, use food that may be thrown to waste, whether it's packed lunch or school lunch, how can it be redistributed without being wasted for families that need it? I deserve an education. I deserve to know how to read and write and do math, and so having high expectations, but not neglecting that need. And so, hey, you need a nap. I get that. So how about you put your head down for 10 minutes, and then I want the rest of the period with you. And then we can talk about how you're going to take a nap on the bus today. But that's part of that relationship that's built when you ask questions and you take the time to ask questions, or you take the time to not shame people about kids come back from being y'all stink, or instead of I'm gonna walk around today, I'm trying to figure out who's not smelling the best, and then at lunch or the next morning, hey, just so you know, I have this spray on deodorant if you need some.
Right.
Just trying to build deeper relationships so that kids are more comfortable. Because when they're more comfortable, they definitely listen, but then they also are able to access their voice so that they can share.
So what am I doing that limits access to certain students to education by assigning a type of homework, that requires something that not all my students have.
Right.
By requiring or having a field trip that can be open to all students that maybe increases access
Right.
for people who may not have already had that access.
Right.
So I may know that 80% of my students have already been on a college visit, but what can I do that opens up that access to the other 20% who haven't been exposed to it?
Yeah, for sure.
So perpetuating versus disrupting it.
Right.
Or do I do a field trip and then I know that only 80% can make it, but I'm okay with that. So then I'd be perpetuating that group's continued exposure to that.
Right.
Or if I were to find a way in which everybody could attend, I would be disrupting it and allowing those 20% to get a different type of exposure. And how can I increase choice and access for my students? So how can they have a voice in a system where they don't feel like they have a voice a lot of times, or where they don't feel like that voice is heard or important?
Right.
Are these parents that or families that come in and they may be more vocal than others in volume, but their power to be heard, their power to influence policy or changes isn't heard because they're just not held on the same tier in some people's eyes as other parents.
Right.
And so how can I ensure that all parents, all students have a voice and a choice in their education? One thing that school systems have been doing more of is trying to provide parent education and parent advocacy and know your rights. And so I think advocating for our parents, advocating for our families, and letting them know what the rules are, right? So a lot of these rules, a lot of the systems were built to benefit other people.
Right.
And so how can we tell them how to navigate this system that wasn't built for them?
Right.
Because if we're being honest, it wasn't, and this is a hundreds-year-old problem. It wasn't built for them. And we've been adapting a broken system that wasn't built for them and trying to change it piece by piece. And so how can we educate them to navigate it so that they can benefit like other families? Whatever needs they bring with them, they need to be asking to be met in some way. And it doesn't mean that one of those needs is for a relationship. It doesn't mean that you're going to find every type of relationship at school, but you can find a sense of belonging somewhere.
Right.
For the basic needs, for your physiological needs, may not mean that the school system can provide you with shelter outside of school hours, but at least can provide you with shelter and a place to feel safe during the school day. And so knowing that you have a right to have your needs met, and the school system, even though it may look different than the way that your family needs to meet those needs, or our community or your city government or your state government or your federal government need to meet those, that the school system has its own way of meeting those, and that you have a right to have those needs met, and a voice in how those are being met. And if they're not, then you need to tell somebody.